saying as early as 2016, he said, what's going on with California and the water? In 2018, he actually saw some of the wildfires in the middle of the forest, and he's sitting there with the governor at his side saying, you guys got to take care of this forest. You make everything worse. Look at what Finland does. Look at what other countries does. Look at what Canada's doing to make sure that if there is a fire, the damage is minimal. Thinning it out. And then this time there's no water. And the president went out of his way in 2020 to make sure water from California was coming from Northern California predominantly, at the risk of some environmental fish, some fish that might have been endangered. Smelts. I don't know what the plural is. And they reverse it. Joe Biden and Governor Newsom reverse it. They said, we're going to keep the smelt fish, and we're going to use a 113-year aqueduct to predominantly give water to Southern California. Well, how did that go? With me right now is Congressman Mark Green. Of course, this is a topic around the country, especially in Washington. Chairman of the Homeland Security Committee with the brand new Congress. Chairman, welcome back. Your thoughts about what's happening on the West Coast to start.
Well, I mean, it's a reflection of how liberal policies just don't work. I mean, they don't work for the energy sector. They don't work for. I mean, they think all in the name of their God. The Green New Deal and climate, that they don't take care of their forests the way other states do. They don't do controlled burns. They don't do forestry management, and this is what they get. And then, of course, the water issue is another absolute insane problem that they created themselves. And then you got the mayor who decides to cut the fire departments, I think $17.5 million this last year. I mean, it's just this is what liberals do. They defund the police. They defund the fire department. The people who really want to serve, they don't like those people. They don't like the military. I mean, it's just, this is who they are. This is the consequence, one of many. I mean, you can look at San Francisco and the feces and hypodermic needles laying all over the street. That's liberal policy. And now people have died, and there's been hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars worth of damage. This is liberal policies, America.
So Governor Newsom yesterday, when asked by Anderson Cooper, what's going on? People say there's no water at the hydrants. He said, well, that's a local issue. You're in the military, Mark. You have this rich military background. Does that have anything to do with any of the leadership seminars that you've been through? When in doubt, blame people underneath me?
Yeah, I think it was Theodore Roosevelt who, first, said the buck stops here. I think it was him.
It's Truman, but he's the same philosophy.
Same philosophy. I mean, you got to own responsibility. You pass praise down, and you take the heat. You take the negatives when the negatives are there. When praise comes, you pass it down. But that's again, it's Gavin Newsom. Well, I mean, we can't expect anything different.
Absolutely. So no one's going to forget what happened last week with the terror attack in New Orleans. Interesting revelations now. People say, why didn't you know more about this guy? This Jabbar, he goes over to Egypt and he disappears for a month. Then he goes to Canada. Then he goes to Tampa. What was he doing? Who was he carousing with? And wasn't there a time in which the intelligence agents in Egypt would alert us? Hey, you got this American with a military background, recently converted back to Muslim, hanging out in some bad neighborhoods. And it turns out maybe you're getting indications that the FBI knew something about him and submitted a travel lookout record prior to his December 31st attack.
Yeah, we're going to have to dig into what the FBI knew and didn't know, and that's going to take Congress doing its oversight mission. The Judiciary Committee and Jim Jordan will definitely dig into this. And look, the fusion centers and what the FBI has done, they've caught some bad guys. But what happened right after 9/11 is they were much more human intelligence oriented on the potential, particularly Islamic threats like this guy, right? The Islamic jihadists. and they relaxed on that. Obama first did it, and pulled the DOJ back from that human. And I mean, when I say human intelligence, I mean they had people in mosques and were talking to communities, et cetera, right? So that human intel is gone now. So we're not picking that piece up. On the SIGINT side should have caught this guy too, and they didn't. And we've got to dig into that and find out why this got missed. So there's a lot of oversight coming, and I think that'll happen between DOD, which is House Armed Services Committee, and Judiciary.
Don't you also think, Chairman, that it's time to put together a blue chip committee on terrorism experts from Ray Kelly to on down to go around to these cities, big and small, and make them justify and bring to light their way of securing in case of an attack? And when we see how inept this superintendent was in New Orleans, how the idiotic statements on why certain things didn't work, like the bollards, as well as not implementing some of these blockers correctly from Meridian. I mean, shouldn't there be a immediate push to make sure big and small cities are ready for the next attack?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the after-action report on particularly the way they block those streets, there will be a lot of lessons learned to get communicated to cities all over the country. And you're right, that failure to take care of the sidewalk, I mean, when a vehicle can just drive around it like that, that's not a blocked street. And people don't understand the mind of evil people, and they just don't think like a military person would to get 360-degree perimeter security. It's just like the failure of the Secret Service at Butler, to leave that building with a line of sight to where the president was. I mean, all of that. And so lessons learned will come from this. We'll send it out to the cities, and the cities have got to act.
That would be a big benefit. And we'll talk about all that. But I do want to talk about what was happening yesterday on Capitol Hill. I know the Senate side was meeting with the president. Here's what he said, cut 27.
Then we came here, we had a meeting, but it was a really good meeting, very strong, and we'll get something done. One bill, two bills, doesn't matter to me. They're going to work that out, but the end result is going to be the same.
Your thoughts about that? Because one bill, they say, is better for you guys because not everybody agrees. And if you give everybody something they want and something maybe they don't want, they'll sign off on it. But if you just ask them to back tax reform, there's a lot of Republicans, believe it or not, there was a couple of dozen last time in the House that didn't like President Trump's tax reform. Maybe they don't want to bolster the border. Maybe they don't want to bolster defense. They think it's too much spending. And they feel it's like, I guess the working theory is, the speaker says if I put everything in, people could say, at least I got something.
Yeah, so when you have such a thin margin, obviously any 2 votes or 3 votes can kill the whole effort, right? So you have to. There's more negotiations that have to go into that, and you're going to have to do it in as big a package, the first package, as possible. But it's important to note, in the comparison to Trump 1.0, the Congress then had people who actually voted no for things because they didn't like Trump. And these were Republicans. The Republicans that are in the House now specifically are much more pro-Trump in Trump 2.0. So you don't have the Trump haters as much inside the Congress amongst the Republicans like you did back when Paul Ryan was, the speaker. And so, what Trump wants, we're going to deliver that agenda because of the overwhelming victory and what the American people said when they elected him this time. And the House is better supportive of President Trump this time around. But yes, it's going to have to be as big a package as possible because, the seat that Brian Fitzpatrick sits in is way different than the seat that I sit in. And, when we're representing our districts, we have to represent those people, too, because that's the whole point of a republic and a representative democracy. So, the Democrats, they vote their ideology. They don't care what the people back in their districts say. We vote for our districts as much as we possibly can in this situation. But very clearly, look, it's the Trump agenda, and we're going to get it done. And the best way to get it done from the House's perspective with such a thin margin is as big a first bill as possible.
Gotcha. Also, President Trump has been speaking at press conference and in interviews about the Panama Canal and Greenland. Here's what he said yesterday, cut 28.
They don't treat us fairly. They charge more for our ships than they charge for ships of other countries. They charge more for our Navy than they charge for navies of other countries. They laugh at us because they think we're stupid, but we're not stupid anymore. So the Panama Canal is under discussion with them right now. They violated every aspect of the agreement, and they've morally violated it also.
And I like that he called out China that's controlling both ends of it. So your thoughts about a plan of action from statements that are correct, by the way, from statements that are correct to action?
So we give a lot of support to Panama. I mean, I was down there a year, maybe 2 years ago, and 7th Special Forces Group was there. The Special Operations Unit that I served in, the Night Stalkers, they were down there doing training with the Panamanian Air Force, our helicopter guys. Panama, other countries all around the world have taken advantage of the United States, and the United States has provided security and freedom to these countries, and we get abused. And so I agree that the president is right. These things have to be addressed. This imbalance. I mean, we can't continue. We're bankrupt with $37 trillion in debt, a devaluing dollar because the BRICS are trying to dump the dollar and create other mechanisms for. I mean, this is 40% of the world's GDP, right? So we've got to act. Mm-hmm. We've got to act and demand that people treat us the same as they treat everybody else, especially if we're going to turn around and provide, military security to these guys. I mean, the president's point, and with Greenland, look, the polar ice caps are melting. The lanes are opening up. Russia and China are in those. If we can strike a deal with Greenland, let's strike a deal with Greenland, whatever it looks like.
I hear you. It doesn't have to be ownership. I mean, there could be territorial status. We could build up our bases there. Obviously, they've had a deal in 2008. Of course, I wouldn't know this till I started looking at Greenland. 2008, they took control of their own affairs, but foreign affairs are handled by Denmark. Well, you know what?
The Danes.
The Danes. So, okay, who's got a better military? Who's closer? So, I mean, what's in their best interest? So, obviously, we're very friendly with a NATO nation like Denmark. They're great. We have no problem with them. But there could be something that worked out there. I think it could be a huge positive. But I want you to hear what Tom Suozzi, a Democrat, told me. Saw the story in the Politico saying that the days of just protesting Trump and fighting against him are really over. And they're seeing there's no more parades against him like the Women's March and they're already seeing some Republicans go along, the Democrats going along with the Lake and Riley Act, including Tom Suozzi in the House. Listen to what he said yesterday, cut 32.
Listen, I'm going to fight President Trump when I disagree with him. When he was the president the first time, I didn't agree with him trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. I didn't agree with deporting the Dreamers, and I'll fight back on that stuff. But I supported him when he wanted to move the American embassy to Jerusalem. I supported him on the Abraham Accords. I worked with him on the First Step Act, which was like a criminal reform thing. I voted for the big vote yesterday. So, I mean, when I can do it, I'm going to do it, especially if that's what my people want.
Do you believe it? Number one. Number two, do you think other people feel that way if you do believe it?
So Suozzi's a different kind of Democrat. And I have had great discussions. He sits on my committee on Homeland Security about securing the border. And to have a Democrat, really want to work to secure the border is a massive unicorn. So he's a unique guy, and I would not use him as an example of some movement amongst the Democrat Party to suddenly they're going to actively work against Trump's nominees. And they have a plan that they're executing to do that, just as disruptive as they were the first time around. But they are in a place as a party where they're trying to figure out who they're going to be. And the Gavin Newsoms and the folks that are the real crazies out there, that have taken over that party's messaging, they're fighting amongst themselves about what that ultimate messaging is going to be. So I think right now you're probably hearing less anti-Trump stuff as they kind of figure themselves out. But Swazi is an outlier. And I, as a Democrat on my committee, I'm glad to have him on my committee. He's pretty easy to work with.
Cuellar is good too on the border.
Cuellar's great, especially on the border.
Right. I just hope, I saw that Senator Mark Wayne Mullen was on with me today. He says he has Democrats and Republicans over his house once a week to talk about how they can get along. I think the American people really want that. Conservatives really want that too, because you can't get everything. So my hope is people know he's only got 4 more years left. Why are you fighting Trump? That day's sailed. Just go out there and try to make the country better.
Yeah, exactly. No, I started this club when I first got into Congress called the Reagan O'Neill Club. And we first started with 8 Democrats and 8 Republicans. You can't talk politics. You can only, talk about each other, have relationships. We might serve a little brown water from Tennessee too, but it's now 50-50, and we've got. It's a great organization of just trying to build friendships.
Congressman Mark Green, always great having you on. I'll see you in Washington next week.
Sounds good, Brian. Take care.
Back in a moment.
You're with Brian Kilmeade.